Allie, these are some serious and the attorneys just now calling Smokey Robinson a serial rapist that needs to be here. One employee says Robinson assaulted her at least 23 times.
What if the softest voice in Motown was hiding the darkest secrets? For years, Smokey Robinson was the guy everyone trusted. Smooth voice, sweet lyrics, clean image. But behind the music, 4 women say the real story was nothing like the songs. What they went through inside his house wasn't just toxic, it was terrifying. And now, they're done staying quiet.
We filed a complaint against William Smokey Robinson Jr. We believe that Mr. Robinson is a serial and
4 women, all from different walks of life, different stories, same messed up situation. They weren't chasing clout or cameras. They were just regular people with jobs to do. Moms, cleaners, women trying to make it through the day. But behind the walls of Smokey Robinson's house, they say they were living through something straight out of a nightmare. Their experiences, now unpacked in a lawsuit that's got people talking, all hit way too close. This wasn't random. They were in the same house, working for the same man, dealing with the same type of fear. And from the way they tell it, that place wasn't just stressful. It was straight up traumatic. They said Smokey wasn't just the smooth-talking music legend everyone grew up loving. Behind closed doors, his house felt more like a trap than a home. And Frances? His wife wasn't some innocent bystander. According to them, she wasn't just aware, she was loud, aggressive, and straight up throwing around insults and chaos like it was routine. The women didn't come forward with their names, but not because they were scared, because what they went through was deep. Heavy. They filed the lawsuit as Jane Does, and the stuff they laid out? Disturbing. The claims weren't just about him making life hard. We're talking about serious accusations. Being trapped, constant fear, and a workplace that felt more like a war zone. And Frances, they say she didn't just let it happen. She played her part too.
4 women are making some disturbing new allegations against a Motown legend. I want to show you a live look at a press conference with the accusers and their attorneys. It's happening as we speak in California.
What made it even more disturbing was how planned it all sounded. Each woman described pretty much the same exact setup. He'd wait until his wife left the house, jump in the shower, come out in just his underwear, lay a towel down on the bed, then call them in like it was part of the job. And then it got dark. The lawsuit said things crossed a serious line. No asking, no protection, no witnesses, just him and whatever he wanted. One of them said it happened to her at least 7 times before she finally quit. She hadn't even been working there that long. She said she tried to talk him down, even reminded him he had a whole wife, but he didn't care. The second woman said it all kicked off back in 2016. She got sent to his place in Chatsworth, the one with no cameras, and that's where things went left. She said he pulled her into the garage and laundry room, touched her without asking, and it didn't stop there. She kept it to herself for years, too scared to speak up. Scared of losing her job, getting deported, or just not being taken seriously. Then there was the third woman. She stuck it out the longest, 12 years. She said it happened over and over, at least 20 times. And at one point, he allegedly even tried to pay her $500 to let him touch her. She said no, but even that didn't get him to back off. The fourth woman's story went back the longest, all the way to a trip to Vegas in 2007. That's where she said it first happened. And later, the same routine popped up again. Shower, towel, bed. Same setup, same fear. She finally walked away in 2024. Said she just couldn't do it anymore.
The oldest of these cases going back to 2006, employment in that year, and you mentioned the latest happening just last year.
What made it even worse? None of them knew about each other. For the longest time, each one thought she was going through it alone. And that silence, that's exactly what he was counting on. But little by little, they started talking. Quiet check-ins turned into full-on breakdowns. They cried, they shared details, and then it hit them. It wasn't just one person's nightmare. So they made the choice. No more whispering, no more carrying it alone. They were done being quiet. They came forward, together.
Robinson's wife is also named in the lawsuit. It details multiple actions, some as recent as last year.
But it wasn't just about what he did behind closed doors. The lawsuit also called out the way both of them allegedly treated these women on the job. They said they were overworked, underpaid, barely got breaks, and never saw a single record of the hours they were grinding. The work environment, beyond toxic. Verbal attacks, racist jabs, emotional damage. It wasn't just bad, it was dehumanizing. And Frances, according to them, she wasn't sitting quiet in the background. They said she was loud, cruel, and flat-out racist, screaming insults, embarrassing them in front of guests, making sure they knew they didn't belong. These women weren't just mistreated as employees. They said they were picked apart for being Hispanic, made to feel small, and trapped in a house that should have at least been safe. So why now? Why come forward after carrying all that for years, even decades? Survival doesn't come with press coverage. These women were just trying to get by. Some didn't even have papers. Most barely had cash. All of them were scared. This wasn't about protecting their names. It was about keeping a roof over their heads and food on the table. Running to the cops up against Smokey Robinson? That wasn't even an option.
3 of the women say they didn't want to report it to police, in part because they were afraid of risking the possible adverse effect on their immigration statuses.
He had the money, the fame, the fan base. They had none of that. They were easy to ignore. Now they're asking for $50 million. Not because they think money erases what happened, but because it's the one thing the system actually lets them ask for. And this might not be the whole story. Word is, Smokey's cut checks in the past to quietly make other situations disappear. If that's true, and those payouts were connected to stuff like this, California's newer laws might finally drag those receipts into court. Those old NDAS, they might not mean a thing now. Now people were asking the real questions. Was this just how he operated? Was this who he really was when the cameras weren't around? And how did it go on for that long, anyone stepping in? Even legal insiders were raising eyebrows. And then came the bigger question. What happens when icons get exposed? It wasn't just Smokey. The list kept growing. Weinstein, R. Kelly, Diddy, Soulja Boy. Even names like Kanye, Lizzo, and Jason Derulo ended up in lawsuits. The music world had been running on power plays and silence for too long. And now, all of it was starting to crack wide open. That's what made this so important. Behind all the headlines and legal talk were actual people who stayed quiet for way too long because they were scared. These 4 women, and maybe more, finally stood up. They were done hiding, done pretending it didn't happen.
And I was in dire straits. Yeah. It was ridiculous. And I hated me, for even letting myself get to.
Compared to a lot of other Motown legends, the ones who had messy breakups, court drama, and total public breakdowns, Smokey always looked like the calm one. No no crazy headlines, no chaos. Just that smooth voice, sweet lyrics, and a smile that made it hard to picture him ever crossing a line. He wasn't just out there singing the hits. He was behind the scenes writing them, shaping the sound of a whole era. For himself, for his group, and for a bunch of other Motown stars. And when the lights went down, he kept it quiet. Never loud, never flashy. If anything, people thought his biggest flaw was being too soft, too romantic, too caught up in love songs. That's why none of this was easy to wrap your head around. But underneath all that soft charm was someone living a way messier life. Back in the day, Smokey opened up about being deep in a crack addiction. Not weed, not pills, crack. It almost wrecked everything. His health, his career, all of it. He later said something spiritual pulled him out. He got clean, he talked about it, and fans gave him grace. It didn't feel like scandal. It felt like survival. Then came the cheating. He was married to Claudette. Yeah, the same Claudette from the group. But that didn't stop him from stepping out. He ended up having a kid with someone else while they were still together. And for a guy who built his whole image on love songs and soul-deep romance, it was awkward. People knew, but no one really brought it up. Claudette stayed for a bit, but eventually it ended. And then the name that always floated around in the background started getting louder. Diana Ross. This wasn't some rumor floating around. Smokey eventually owned up to it. Yeah, he and Diana Ross had a thing. And yeah, It happened while he was still married. It went down early in their Motown days, when both of them were just blowing up. He said it lasted about a year and ended because the guilt kicked in, not because anyone busted them. And honestly, that whole guilt angle, that's probably what saved his image. He didn't deny it, but he wrapped it in reflection and regret. Unlike others who went down in flames, he knew when to speak and when to fall back. That balance kept him likable. Flawed, but still relatable. But this lawsuit, this wasn't about love gone sideways, or someone slipping up in their marriage. It wasn't about drugs or fame messing with judgment. This was about something way darker, about control, about fear, about women who said they were hurt and ignored for way too long.